Hi, everybody. Welcome to the offices of Attract Capital.
Hello, everyone.
We're here in East Setauket, New York, on Long Island, with
Yes, we are.
David Barnett, CEO and founder of Attract Capital.
Hope you're having a great day.
How are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. It's a little nippy out today. Fall is in the air here in Long Island.
I know, it really is. It's getting cold. I'm ready to move someplace warm. This is not my kind of weather. So we're here to talk to everybody today about how to not botch your M&A closing.
That's a very important topic, Sonia, how not to botch your M&A closing. And it's one that people really don't learn enough about before they get into the process. And then you see all sorts of disasters as you get down to the end of the process. So I think it's really good that we're focusing on this today, because I know a lot of people in the Attract Capital universe have questions related to this, because again, it's not, people think it's easy, but it's really not easy when you look at all that is involved in your closing.
Yeah, it's a multi-step process. And it can
Exactly right.
Lots of I's to dot and T's to cross, and we're going to talk about that today. So, Dave, what is the first step you think into, having a successful M&A close?
Well, Sonia, I think the key is relationship stability between a buyer and a seller. Relationship stability is key because sellers have really never sold their business before. You only do it once in the life cycle of your company, and a lot of them see it as a very tumultuous, somewhat of a roller coaster ride from an emotional standpoint for many of these sellers, because everything that's made their business great, everything that's made their product great, their customer relationship strong, their management team well defined, everything about their business, nothing has prepared them for the process of selling their company, because it could be a very legalistic process, it could be a very impersonal process, and a lot of them just get uncomfortable with it. So one of the things that you need to do if you're a buyer is you really need to focus on reaching out to your seller and getting to know them as a person, getting to know about their background, getting to know about their families, getting to know about what they like to do in their free time, so that you can always relate back to that and have those touchstones as you're going through the negotiation and the closing process with your seller. Because a lot of times sellers get cold feet because it's a very hard process for them to get through. I think a lot of them feel it should be easier than it ultimately is. And when it's not easier, and because they can't get it done quickly, they get frustrated. And when they get frustrated, they kind of shut down. So as a smart buyer, you really need to be able to kind of reach out, touch the seller in a way where you're empathizing with him or her, and you're getting them comfortable that ultimately, as long as they trust in you as a buyer, that you can get to a resolution and the closing will happen.
Okay, and you have so much experience doing this, Dave, many, many years.
I think a lot of times people just get caught up in the little issues and they don't focus on the big things. And then because a lot of this communication happens in a digital format, it happens via email, it happens via Skype, or it happens telephonically, that there's less of a human element in the close process, because deals are happening all over the world, and I had people from 4 countries on a conference call a couple of weeks ago, and nobody's in the same meeting room, and it's hard for people to kind of really read the situation when it's an endless stream of emails and it's a lot of text messaging. So I think it's just the vagaries of the process kind of weigh on people being able to buy into the fact that the closing is really going to happen. So I think people just get doubts.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And who are the people that you need as a business buyer or seller to have on your team going through?
Well, I think, in addition to relationship stability, which is the first important element, I think the other very important element is you want to have a practical lawyer on your side. You need to have somebody who is experienced with closing transactions and somebody who understands the issues, can anticipate the issues before they happen, and be able to resolve them. And you don't always find that in a lawyer, Sonia. And lawyers have a slightly different. I think lawyers are very valuable. You have to have a lawyer on your team, but you need a solution provider, not an issue. Somebody that is constantly focused on intractable issues, but somebody that knows how to resolve problems.
Okay. And how do you best discern that? Would you be a source to recommend lawyers that would be a good fit?
I want to say in 80% of the deals that we do, we're recommending lawyers to our clients because we've worked with hundreds of lawyers in closing deals. I want to say there's a pretty short list of lawyers that we would recommend, but all of these lawyers are people that understand the big issues and the minor issues, and they focus all their time on the bigger issues. And they're also very focused on their clients' needs, okay? Lawyers need to be focused on their clients' needs and getting the deal done, as opposed to a lot of lawyers are more true to the theoretical side of the law and their interpretation of the law and their interpretation of the contract and the terms and the provisions. So I think if you get a lawyer who's more of a pragmatist as opposed to a theorist, they make much better team members on your deal closing team. And you also want to get a lawyer. I think one of the telltale signs, Sonia, for the people that we've recommended and we've worked with are people that work well with others.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's sort of common sense, but there's three major parties as part of any closing. There's a lender, there's a buyer, and there's a seller. Everybody's going to have their own lawyer, so you need somebody who's going to be able to play with everybody and relate to everybody else as an individual so that they're all on the same page, and not somebody who's going to be an isolationist, kind of look at the document, come up with all these points, send it over to the other side. You need somebody who can work cohesively with everybody else on the team.
Right, a people person.
Exactly right. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. And what about a timeline in terms of getting the close to actually happen within a certain time frame?
Well, you raise a great point, Sonia. So the next thing, so after you have relationship stability and after you have a pragmatist as your legal counsel, you need a driving force to get through the closing. And what do I mean by the driving force? The lawyer is not always the driving force. The lawyer is going to have he's going to have a lot of work to get through, a lot of documents to read. But you need somebody that's independent of the lawyer. Usually it's the advisor. Usually it's the buyer's advisor who is setting the pace, getting everybody on the same page, setting up the conference calls, anticipating the issues, and is sort of filtering for his client and for the lender the big issues and the small issues, and really helping push the whole closing ahead. If you don't have somebody who's pushing the whole closing ahead, it's going to lag, and inevitably it'll default to the pace that the lawyers are setting between them. And you have three different lawyers, and usually the pace of the three different lawyers defaults to the speed of the slowest lawyer. So unless you have somebody who's actively looking at this project as a multi-step process and has laid it out in terms of a project plan and understands what all the time intervals are and understands what all the gating items are, unless you have somebody who's looking at it scientifically and is getting their arms around all the different elements and all the critical paths here, then you're really defaulting to the lawyers dictating it. Now, sometimes if the lawyers are really good and they're all synced up and they know what's important and they get all their work done, they can get it done quickly. But I would say more often than not, you need a business person, and that tends to be the advisor, who's setting the pace and who's realistic about the timeline. Because one of the things about closing, Sonia, is that people underestimate the complexity of the closing. A closing will have at least a half a dozen documents between a buyer and a seller. Okay? A closing will also have at least 10 to 15 legal agreements between the buyer and the lender. Okay? Within those agreements, there's dozens of schedules that are required, and in order to produce those schedules and in order to meet the provisions and the requirements of those agreements, there's lots of deliverables. Okay? A lot of those deliverables are things that the team that's working on the closing can provide, and they have a vested interest in providing them. But a lot of those deliverables, or some of the deliverables, are provided by people that are outside of the team. They don't have a vested interest in the closing. For example, a bank. A bank might have to give an agreement. A landlord might have to sign an agreement. You might have an insurance company that has to assign something over. So there's a whole host of third-party stakeholders in the company or in the deal that have to be brought into it. And so I think a lot of people think, okay, once we've signed the LOI, once we get the commitment letter from the bank, we're going to close in a week. You're not going to close in a week. You need somebody to sit down with a project plan, map it out, find out what the critical paths are, and really manage it and kind of make sure that the whole team is orchestrated and working well together.
What's the average time frame would you estimate for a middle market deal?
Well, we've closed middle market deals in as quickly as 21 days,
wow.
Which was blistering fast. We've also closed them in 2 or 3 months. And it always comes down to the level of organization that the buyer has about their company and the seller has about their company. If they're organized and they're synced up and they can get the lender what they need, then it can go really quickly. But if they're not organized and they're not synced up, it can take a while. Mm-hmm. And there's usually 1 or 2 issues that kind of, but it's not, but see, the thing is, Sonia, in addition to the closing process, all that has to be gathered pursuant to all the different agreements, there's also business issues that are going on in the background. And a lot of times, there's uncertainty between the buyer and the seller up to the very end, or there's uncertainty between the lender up until the very end. So a lot of times you're going to have situations where people might be very organized, they might be very detailed, they might be getting everything together, all their deliverables, but there's still a question mark and somebody might be pulling back. At the same time, somebody wants to get closer to the finish line. So it's kind of a push-pull on the business side, while at the same time there's all this administrative kind of legal paperwork going on. So it's not that unusual for deals to hit a point where people are questioning, do we really want to do this deal? If you have motivated sellers, if you have motivated buyers and lenders, which the deals we work on certainly do, then there's always consensus to take it forward. But I've seen it where people kind of pull back, and unless the process is organized enough and unless it has enough momentum, that pullback can result in the deal not happening.
Right.
And when the deal doesn't happen, when you have sort of they call them a deal that just goes off the rails or an aborted transaction, when you have that, it sucks so much energy out of a company. There's so much time. There's so much investment that's been made in terms of fees, in terms of just energy, and people have made such a huge emotional investment in a deal that when a deal dies, it's a pretty difficult thing for a company to deal with, whether you're a buyer or a seller. So it's to be avoided at all costs.
And what is one major piece of advice you can give people to not having that happen? How do you is it having an advisor? I mean, obviously it's the human relationship, it's having a good lawyer, it's having a good advisor, but is it also you have to keep on riding the pace and pushing people towards the close?
Well, you do, but you also have to push people forward towards the close within the construct of a collaboration, and not an over-negotiation. So it's collaborate, don't over-negotiate. So when you're doing these middle market deals, people need to respect each other's opinions and understand why the other party wants it a certain way. You're not going to be able to completely change everything about what the lender's asking for. You're not going to be able to completely change everything what the seller's asking for. The seller won't be able to change what the buyer's asking for. But you need to understand where they're coming from, respect it, and then collaborate and not over-negotiate it. And what I see, what happens over and over again, is that people miscalibrate and they focus on the unimportant aspects of the deal as opposed to the important aspects of the deal. So if I had to estimate, Sonia, I would say that within all the deal points, 10% of what you're going to be discussing with the other side is important, and 10% is major, 90% is minor. But yet a lot of the people that are involved in a closing focus and over-focus on the minor points. So what happens when you over-negotiate the minor points, it creates a lot of heaviness, it slows down the process. And I have a saying that over-negotiation ultimately can lead to obliteration, because what can happen there is that when you're over-negotiating minor points, the other party at some point says, what's with this person, okay? They question your business judgment because you're over-negotiating points that they're really never they're never engaged with other people over-negotiating. So it comes down to you want to pick the right battles, focus on the major point, And you have to realize that in the middle market, it's important for everybody who's at the table has to get a win. The lender has to feel as if that they got a win. The seller has to feel as if they got a win. And the buyer has to feel as if they got a win. If somebody leaves the table, Sonia, and feels as if their ox got gored by the other party, that's a bad situation.
That's a good analogy. So it's not a Shark Tank. Avoid that entire climate.
Right, it's not a testosterone den where you're trying to prove your manhood or your womanhood, or an estrogen den, I guess, or a testosterone den. Right. It's not like that. Right. People aren't trying to prove that they're better. Right. It's collaboration, and it's sort of respect for the positions that other people have, because lenders' positions are important to them because there's certain things that they can't live without. A seller is more flexible than a lender, but there's certain things that they want to get out of the deal. The buyer, right, there's certain things that they want to get out of the deal. Everybody needs to get kind of what they want to get out of the deal. And when you're doing it within an environment of collaboration as opposed to confrontation and over-negotiation, you can get a deal done. But when people are too confrontational and there's too much negotiation, there's a heaviness and it slows it down. And when it slows down, I mean, the other old saying is that time kills deals. The longer it goes on, the more open items there are, the more inertia there is, the less likely it is to close.
Right. That makes sense. And is the trusted advisor the person that kind of keeps everybody happy and kind of is the peacekeeper, so to say? Are you the peacekeeper, Dave?
So Attract Capital is the United Nations peacekeeping force.
Yes.
In the volatile geopolitical world in which we live. We are keeping the peace. Kind of. So what the advisor is understands what everybody wants, but yet understands what's reasonable for everybody to get. Okay? And educates everybody involved in the closing as to what is a fair outcome for them, and tries to get everybody on the same page. So the advisor is the one that's setting the pace. The advisor is the one that is anticipating where the issues are going to be. So you might have a buyer of a business, and the seller has a certain issue with respect to just there's a car that they have that they want to take with them, and it's a $50,000 item, and it might be a $10 million purchase price for the business, but you know that that's an important emotional issue for the seller, but you know that the buyer doesn't want to let the seller keep the car. So it kind of makes sense for somebody from an outside perspective to say, listen, it's only $50,000, Mr. Seller. You know, if you want to keep that car, then you should give the buyer a credit for the value of the car. And kind of intervene and be the adult in the room and say, listen, sort of diffuse the situation. But I think what happens a lot of times is that you are going to reach an impasse in your closing. Either the numbers aren't going to be where people thought they were, maybe the working capital target isn't where people thought it was going to be, or maybe there's a customer issue that suddenly appeared that nobody ever thought about that you have to work through. So there's always going to be an impasse. And one of the things that you want to focus on is you got to get around it. If you trust in your advisor, okay, so if the seller has an advisor, they've got to trust in the advisor to get them through that impasse. The buyer has an advisor, they have to trust the advisor. Oftentimes, when people get into a stressful situation where it looks like the deal may not go forward, their instinct is to take over and to try to resolve it on their own, and that doesn't always work. It's better to have the advisors who do this for a living figure out the solution so that you can get to the close and you can resolve the issue. And so I think when people, and it's hard for a principal to do that because principals are geared to kind of take matters into their own hands, but you're really better off letting the advisor get through the issue and resolve the impasse.
That makes a lot of sense, Dave. So what are the summary points that we want to hit upon in order to have people successfully get through their close? We want to make sure they're human and they talk on a human level.
Right. You want to lock in your seller. You want to have relationship stability.
Right.
Okay. You want to get a practical lawyer on your team who can engage and connect well with others. You want to have a business advisor as the driving force to keep everybody on the same page.
Right.
You want to collaborate as opposed to over-negotiate and work on achieving win-win solutions with the other parties.
Right.
You want to trust in your advisor. You want to have an advisor whose judgment you can rely upon when times get tough,
Right.
so that you can get to the other side of the transaction. And last but not least is that you want to communicate early and you want to communicate often.
Okay.
Communicating early and often means that the only free lunch in a closing, where
Right.
there's lots of different people involved in it, and it's a very intricate, documentation process, is that other sides are constantly communicating, and there's constantly being information exchanged. And when you are involved in this, you want to be out in front of any issues. You want to communicate early with the other side because you want to be able to frame the issues. You don't want the issues to frame you. You want to frame the issues. And the only way you get through certain issues that pop up on a closing is through communicating with a high degree of frequency, so everybody's on the same page. So if you communicate early and you communicate often, you have a much higher chance of having a successful closing and eliminating all those time variables
Right.
that kind of bog the process down, create more inertia,
Right.
stretch out the close, and make it harder for you to get to the finish line.
Right. No, that's a very good point. And oftentimes when you communicate early, and if you don't repeat it again, people are going to forget. So it's important to outline your needs and objectives and your goals and to bring them right. Am I right with that?
Absolutely. I mean, communication is the building block of any successful business transaction called. So, I mean, in order for people to work together as one cohesively, everybody needs to be on the same page. And that's what the closing is. The closing is the ultimate in people working together.
Right.
It's not people working against each other, it's people working together. And communication lubricates the overall communication process for a closing.
Well, thank you very, very much, Dave. This has been a great discussion today. If anybody wants to see more webinars that we've done in the past or tune in next month to our upcoming webinar, you can stay tuned on Facebook or follow Dave on LinkedIn, David Barnett, or check us out online at www.attractcapital.com. Thank you so much for your time today, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.